Resuming debate. Pleased to debate the honourable member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise today as a Member of Parliament for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, and also as a proud Métis Canadian, one who wants to see First Nations thrive and prosper, Métis thrive and prosper, and all Canadians thrive and prosper. The opposite has in fact happened under 10 years of the Liberal government. Crime is up, cost of living is up, food bank usage is up, hopelessness is up, economy is down. Opportunities are down, and the employment is down. The malaise that is felt in Canada from the Pacific to the Atlantic to the Arctic Oceans is felt in all our communities. And it's being experienced among Indigenous and non-Indigenous people alike. Bill C-10 is the latest example of what the government does best. Announce, re-announce, repackage, and then do nothing. Exactly. It proposes a new bureaucracy, a commissioner for modern treaty implementation. Something that sounds nice, something that reads nice in a press release. But when you open the box, what do you see? Nothing. No real powers, no real accountability, no tangible outcomes, just more process and delay. And Canadians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike, are right to be frustrated because this government has had 10 years to act, and yet it's delivered 0 new modern treaties. And that's a fact. In contrast, the Conservative government under Prime Minister Stephen Harper produced 5 modern treaties that were signed in 6 years. That's 5 treaties. So, Mr. Speaker, I ask, what exactly is this commissioner supposed to do that hasn't already been done, or that shouldn't have already been done? Will the commissioner build new homes? Will the commissioner provide clean drinking water? Will the commissioner hire police officers or ensure that Indigenous policing is treated as the essential service it is? No, Mr. Speaker, it won't. Because this commissioner has no power. Its mandate is to strengthen relationships and uphold the honor of the Crown. But it cannot compel action. It cannot enforce treaties. It cannot even table its own reports to Parliament without waiting for the minister's permission. In fact, Parliament itself cannot direct or review or audit. So who does this office report to? The very people it's meant to oversee. Mr. Speaker, this is not oversight. That's a public relations exercise. And let's be honest about what's really happening here. The government knows that it has failed Indigenous peoples again. It knows the Auditor General has issued dozens of reports, not just 1 or 2, but over 14 just since 2015, detailing how the government has been failing Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit peoples in everything from housing to clean water to treaty implementation. And what has the government done with these reports? Ignored them. Now Indigenous peoples, many of them are rightfully frustrated, are calling for more oversight. Not because they believe that Ottawa will suddenly fix things, but because government has refused to deliver on its own obligations. And I don't blame these leaders for their frustration. I do not blame them for trying every option. What I do blame is the Liberal government that instead of fixing the real problem, its own departments not doing their jobs, decades to create another layer of bureaucracies to give the illusion of progress. Mr. Speaker, we already have systems in place. The courts, the Auditor General, parliamentary committees, deputy ministers, performance frameworks, oversight committees, secretariats, internal audits. The government doesn't need another reminder of that it's failing. It needs to start doing its job. The Auditor General has already laid out how to fix this, going back 2 decades. In 2005, the report on the treaty land entitlement obligations. 2006, report on the BC treaty process. 2013, audit on modern treaty implementation. 2016, report on the Labrador Inuit Agreement. The Liberals government has had a map, but instead of following it, they got lost in their own maze of offices, titles, and press conferences. And while they were doing that, the communities were suffering. Treaty rights weren't being honored, fiscal transfers were delayed, infrastructure was crumbling, police underfunded, housing inadequate. So, Mr. Speaker, why do you think one more office will suddenly change everything? You know what might actually change something? Is accountability. Ask yourself, who has been fired for all these failures? Who's been demoted? Which departments have been reorganized? What consequences have been imposed on those who have failed to implement the treaties that have already been signed? None. Zero. Mr. Speaker, as Ellis Ross, my colleague from Skeena Buckley Valley and former treaty negotiator himself said, why would anyone believe a powerless commissioner will get results when years of direct negotiation with the government hasn't? And he's right. The root isn't oversight. The issue is a government that refuses to be accountable, that prefers symbolic gestures over real results. Let's remember what these treaties mean. Modern treaties are a nation-to-nation agreement. They are not symbolic. They're legally binding. Indigenous governments negotiated hard for them. They traded undefined rights and titles for legal certainty under the laws of Canada. That's paramountcy. They came to the table in good faith. It's Canada that has not been holding up its end of the bargain. Now the Liberals are proposing a commissioner whose job is to watch the government break its own promises politely. Mr. Speaker, this is not reconciliation, this is theater. Under this government, and now under their new Prime Minister, we've seen more bureaucracy than ever. A defense investment agency, duplicating what the DND already does. A $13 billion housing bureaucracy, while no homes are built. Now this, a modern treaty commissioner with no teeth. And now for what? The parliamentary budget officer just called this government's spending as unsustainable. Canada now spends more on interest payments than it does on health care. Our economy is the slowest growing in the G7 with the highest unemployment. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister who took office in March hasn't even tabled a budget in 7 months. 2/3 of the fiscal year is already gone and we have no budget. But somehow they're going to find money for another office. Another round of talking points, another layer of bureaucracy that accomplishes nothing. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are tired of it. Indigenous peoples are tired of it. And conservatives are tired of it. We don't need a commissioner to tell us the government is failing. We already know that. We don't need another office to report on reports that are already gathering dust in bureaucratic shelves. And we certainly don't need a Prime Minister who refuses to lead. Here's what we do need. We need a department to do their jobs. We need ministers who are accountable. We need Indigenous peoples to be respected as equal partners, not clients of the state. We need to uphold the honor of the Crown by fulfilling the promises that we've made, not creating new positions to tell us that we didn't. Mr. Speaker, reconciliation is not measured in how many offices we open in Ottawa. It's measured in home built, water cleaned, treaties honored, safety delivered, and prosperity shared. Let's stop the charade. Let's scrap this hollow bill and get back to doing the hard work of government. Common sense conservatives will continue to stand with Indigenous Canadians, with treaty partners, and with all Canadians believing in results, not reports, in leadership, not lip service, and in government that does its job, not just expands itself. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, as we start to wind down the debate today, it's become apparently clear and somewhat sad that the Conservative Party has taken the position to vote against Bill C-10. This is a legislation that puts into place an independent agent of Parliament that will be a strong voice in dealing with modern treaties. And the Conservatives, for political partisanship reasons, has decided that only they know that this is or believe that this is a bad idea. When you have Indigenous leaders from coast to coast to coast that want to see the legislation passed, you have every other political entity inside the Parliament that wants to see legislation of this nature, but the Conservatives have made their decision. They don't like the legislation. Does the member feel any guilt at all in terms of rejecting what Indigenous leaders across Canada want to see made into law?
The honourable member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Well, I think that Indigenous leaders are responding to the lack of action and respect to them and to treaties. So that's what they're responding. They're grasping at straws. Like, let's do something. Because why? The Liberals are not doing their job. And what's their solution here again is just to build another bureaucracy. Let's just add another bureaucracy to do something, and also to report not to Parliament but to their minister. So that's not accountability. That's just another way to get plum jobs off to their friends.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. L'honorable député de La Pointe.
The honourable member for La Pointe-Lille. I'd like to thank my colleague. We were on the Official Languages Committee together for quite a while. When the Conservatives criticize this and say that it's a matter of bureaucracy, we may agree with the principle of the bill, but we see that there are no binding powers. It reminds me of something that we saw at Official Languages. As I said earlier, we've seen that despite the fact that official languages legislation has existed for over 50 years, official languages are doing worse and worse. Even though the commissioner constantly complains about it, the government doesn't do anything and things just get worse. So ultimately, if we're going to create this position for a commissioner, shouldn't that person have binding powers?
The honourable member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Oui, merci, Omar.
I'd like to thank my colleague from the Bloc, my committee colleague. I don't think we need this new position. The powers, the reports are already there from the Auditor General and from the courts. We don't need more. We don't need more. It will just mix things up. It will just actually slow these processes down.
Question et commentaire. L'honorable député de London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague from Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, for his wonderful speech. It was nice to hear his thoughts on Bill C-10. This bill will establish an independent commissioner and office. And yes, Conservatives support modern treaties. Our concerns is the proposed legislation to establish an independent commissioner and office will add another layer of bureaucracy and cost to this government. Will my fellow colleague, does your opposition for Bill C-10 reflect unwillingness and accountability and/or oversight? Thank you.
Again, remember to address questions through the chair. The honourable member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. And the Conservatives are not at all in opposition to accountability. We are for accountability and for oversight and respecting treaty rights. We just haven't seen this. We are just concerned about another level of the bureaucracy to slow things down. This is, like I mentioned earlier in my speech, this is one thing that the Liberals do great at, and that is gumming things up with red tape, and we're filling it with projects, and on that topic, with resource projects, this is in many of our First Nation communities. They need these resource projects to go on, and what are they doing? They're adding more and more. They're strangling the prosperity of First Nations. That would be something that they could do that would make a difference. Thank you.